And then you might notice that thought is arising in your experience. Maybe the mind is active. But just as the body is being breathed, you might recognize that thought is also arising without you doing anything. And you might just notice that you are not the creator of the thoughts. Just as you are not creating the breath that is breathing the body. There's nothing you have to figure out. It's just a case of being aware of what's actually already occurring. And maybe you feel sensations in the body. Are you creating these sensations, or are they just occurring? It's a very beautiful thing just to take a moment to relax and become aware that you are not in control of anything. You, who you see yourself to be. So again, notice the breath. It's arising in your awareness. My voice is arising in your awareness. If you can hear any noise outside or in the room that you're in, that too is arising within your awareness. Is there anything that you perceive, feel, or think that is arising outside of your awareness? Is the body that you normally call I, is that also arising in your awareness? Or is everything that you see, feel, think Is it all confined inside a particular body that you call yourself? And even if you think that everything is arising inside the confines of your body, be aware that you are actually aware of even that. So again, who are you? Are you the body? Are you the one breathing the body? Are you the creator of thought, sensation, objects arising in your awareness? If you recognize yourself to be that which is aware, then the answer is yes. If you recognize that you, as awareness or consciousness itself, is all there is, the objects are not separate from consciousness. The essence of everything is that one. And you are that. So again, take a moment and recognize you as consciousness is breathing the body. You as consciousness is animating everything. And even if you don't understand it with your mind, you can always just come back and realize I am that which is aware of my thinking, of thought, of sensation. Even the thought that I am separate is also arising, and its essence is consciousness itself. When you just allow yourself to let go of what you think you already know, and make the very small shift in recognizing that I am that which is aware. And allow yourself to be fascinated with that truth. You will be able to witness your confusion, your frustration, any resistance, as just another object arising within your awareness. You will start to see through the endless personalization of content, meaning something about you as an isolated, separate entity that is disconnected from the source and from your pure essence. The belief of separation is just another object that's arising in your awareness. Why is that thought any more important than the thought that today is a beautiful day? So if you take the time to slow down and just stop, and not label, not judge, and not personalize the content that you are aware of, you will be able to rest as yourself and you will find a deep relaxation. That will allow you to recognize every object, every situation, every thought, every feeling, every person, animal or plant. You will recognize them all as objects arising from consciousness as consciousness. And then you will be able to start to see through the illusion that creates so much suffering for you and for everybody else. The spiritual path is not about changing anything. It's about recognition. It's about understanding what's real and true and what's not. It's very, very simple. It's so simple that you won't be able to get it if you impose any idea that you are isolated and separate from that which always is. But somewhere all of you are already connected to the truth that I'm talking about. Already intuit that there is more to life than my individual self, my fears, my desires, my frustration. You wouldn't be on this call if you didn't already know deep down inside that you are not all of that. And you don't have to participate in the drama anymore. If you don't want to. So again, just go back to your breath and take a deep breath in and feel the joy of witnessing consciousness breathing itself in the form of your body. So every time you breathe, see if you can get in touch with what an amazing sensation breath actually is in the breathing process actually is. You are not doing anything. You as a separate self are not doing anything. You are being breathed. Consciousness is breathing itself. And there's not a separate I in that picture. And the reason why it's not in the picture is because the separate I actually doesn't exist. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes and a whole world's going to appear. And everything you see is also arising in your awareness right now. So nothing's really changed if your eyes are closed or your eyes are open. It's just different. You kind of look around. Maybe you're in a room by yourself. Just kind of look around and see if you can relate to things a little bit differently. Or if you look on the screen, just see if you can relate to something a little bit differently. Okay, so it's very, very nice to see everybody tonight. I'm only going to talk for a short period of time because the meditation was longer than I expected, but that's just how it goes. And then I want to open it up for questions. There's a lot of people on the call that I already know, and everybody should just feel free to jump in. If you're new to the call, also feel free to jump in, and we can actually just see where we go. The one thing I just wanted to talk about a little bit today, and it's actually, I just changed my mind what I was going to talk about. It just happened right now. And we're on the last couple of days of a 6-week intensive course here, and it's been a fantastic group, and we also have a fantastic group of people at the Quinta right now. Some of them are on the call. And some of what we've been talking about in the intensive is a couple of different, well, quite a few different things. It's a 6-week course, so we spent a lot of time on a lot of different things. But one of the things that we've talked about recently is intimacy. And what is intimacy? And so often when we think about that word, for most people, intimacy will come in regards to a sexual relationship. That's your most intimate relationship, supposedly, even though sometimes, most of the time, that may not be the case. Or intimate relationship with friends or with family. And we're always looking for intimacy. There's always a longing in our heart to actually be really together with the other. And there's also a very, very strong desire in most people. And some people act on it and become more conscious, and some people not. But I think this desire is there in everyone. And that desire is really just to be more and more myself, and to find something that I can truly trust and rest in, something that I can be deeply relaxed. It's not dependent upon any particular situation or any particular outcome or anybody in particular doing anything in particular. So when people look for intimacy, usually we're looking outside ourselves to fulfill this longing. And we're always disappointed because nobody can ever fill that longing if we haven't gone inward first and recognized that true intimacy is when I recognize that there is only one, and I am that. You cannot hold the position of a separate self and find true intimacy. So if your center of gravity is more identified with the separate I, the I that, maybe has history, the separate I that thinks I have something to get over before I can be myself, the separate I that's always insisting that there's a problem, the separate I that loves to dramatize, thoughts and feelings going through their head, the separate I that's always looking for something because something is always missing, the separate I that's afraid. So if your primary identification is with the separate I, you're always going to be in reaction to your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. You're going to be in reaction to what other people are doing or not doing. We're always going to be able to blame someone because they don't fulfill us in the way that we want, or we're even going to blame God. Sometimes people get very angry, like, God, what's the matter? Why aren't you giving me what I want? And so I think everybody on the call can recognize this constant state of seeking intimacy. But what we don't recognize sometimes is that the deepest intimacy we have is that understanding that we are always that one. And in that recognition, there's nothing missing. There's no need to seek intimacy because it's already there. There's no need to seek trust because inherent in that resting, trust is already there. So intimacy is not something we can get. It's actually what we already are. And if we can come together with other people in that recognition, what we start to recognize is that intimacy can manifest itself in many very normal interactions with other people. It doesn't have to be a special feeling with a special one. It can just be sitting quietly and resting very deeply at your office, for example, or in your home, or someplace beautiful, or just having a conversation with a friend where both people are not imposing any kind of separation or any ideas of how anything should be. It's a deep sense of contentment. And that deep sense of contentment can happen at any time. It's not limited. But if you're looking for a specific thing that's called intimacy or a specific thing that's called contentment, you probably won't find it. Because you're moving away, you're looking outside for that which is already who you actually already are. So really, intimacy is something that we recognize. Trust is something we recognize. Happiness is something we recognize. And we recognize it just is. And we don't have to do anything with it. We don't have to do anything to create it. I think this is such the amazing thing that constantly blows my mind, is that there's so many ideas we have about so many things, that intimacy that we're seeking for is right here, right now, in every situation, always. But we just don't recognize it because we think it has to be connected to a certain feeling or a certain person. And it's so incredibly limited. And there's somewhere that everybody already knows what I'm saying. And I think that's one reason why, if we're seeking outside ourselves for the intimacy that's always there, and somewhere we already know that, there's a deep sense of frustration. I don't know if any of you have noticed that before. It's kind of like, I want to be free, I want to be free, I want to be free, I want to be free. And it's like, I really want to be free. And you're really serious about it. You really want to be a free human being. And you really, really want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I really want to be happy. Instead of recognizing, I am free, I am free, I am happy, I am happy. I am already that. So the whole movement of wanting what's already there is what causes you suffering, and what causes you confusion, and what causes unhappiness. So it's super simple. And we just have to let in that recognition that it's super simple, and it's okay to be happy for the sake of being happy. It's okay to do something for the joy of doing it, not for the sake of having to be the one that's doing something or having an excuse to be happy. You can be happy because that's who you are. You can be joyful because that's the essence of who you are. So I think that's really, really what I wanted to say to kind of kick things off. I don't know if people can relate to what I was saying, but I'm pretty sure some of you can, if not all of you. So let's open up and, just to remind everybody, we're recording the call. So if you prefer not to be seen, you're going to need to turn your camera off. And if you, I think that's better. If you don't want to be heard, then maybe you can type in a question, but it's a little hard to have a dialogue if you're typing and I'm talking. So, let's just go with the audio will be on, but if you want to keep the camera off, it's fine. Is everybody with me in what I was saying? Isn't it amazing? Constantly blows my mind. Just the fact that we can be happy is like, just let that in for a moment. It's like, wow, you mean I can just be happy? It's just kind of weird that we don't get that. You know what I mean? I got to work really hard to be happy. I got to get over my problems before I'm happy.
I have a question, I think.
Okay. Do you want to turn your camera on, Lotte?
Yeah, I think Flores is doing it. Well, I was really relating to what you're saying about intimacy, because it's a subject that I'm my mind is very busy with it the last couple of months. And it was saying all the time, like, oh, I need more intimacy because I feel bad and I need it. So I really relate to what you're saying. But now I was wondering, so how do you see like intimacy and the need of sort of what's the word for troost? Support, or sort of I don't know if that's the right word, but people who if you, for example, if you're sad, people who support you, comfort you.
Comfort.
I think I'm also sort of confusing or seeing those things as the same thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But do you think that's the same thing? Do you look at intimacy the same as comfort, or is that sort of in the same line, or is it something else completely?
I think when we're seeking for it, it can be in the same line.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think intimacy and comfort, it's all based on wanting to feel better, right? There's just different ways of wanting to feel better, but also intimacy has a sense of I want to be connected, right? And so again, it always comes back to what's the deepest spiritual truth. Because if there is only consciousness and I am that, at my essence, it doesn't deny that there's an individual called Lotte who has feelings and, but if you recognize yourself to be consciousness itself, and you start to rest more deeply in that which is aware of everything that's arising, and then you start to recognize that everything that's arising is also arising from that same consciousness, which is you, then you also recognize that nothing is really missing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the same, like I'm already comforting myself. There is no need to seek for it.
Right.
Right.
Exactly, because if you recognize there's nothing missing, You see, then you don't need to seek outside for anything because nothing is missing. You're actually resting in something, sometimes the human experience of recognizing what I'm saying is just when you think about maybe a time that you've been very, very desperate or very alone. And in that moment, you actually feel like you're being held. There's a moment where you feel like everything is terribly wrong and you're scared or you're confused or whatever it is. But then if you just get tired enough and you just stop, then you'll recognize, you actually go, God, oh. And there's a moment you feel like you're being held.
Yeah, I recognize that. It mostly me after a good cry.
Yeah. Well, a good cry sometime is what you need to do in order to release all that, all that contraction and holding. But the most important thing is when you have that human experience of feeling like you're being held, you see everything else disappears. And that is you as consciousness recognizing yourself in form. The habit is not to rest there, but that's not a problem. It's not a problem that there's a habit to think that you have to look outside yourself for comfort or for intimacy. That's not a problem, because if you just recognize that habit as a movement of mind, really, it's just a habit that's moving, but you're aware of the habit. You see, you're still resting. You can just shift your attention from going around the loop with all of that. You just sit back and watch the loop go. But instead of being fascinated with the loop, you're like, oh my God, I'm completely relaxed and resting, even though my mind is going absolutely crazy right now. Or my emotions, or fear is just going everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
So the intimacy, so from intimacy, when you said if it's connected to comfort, when you start to rest in intimacy, to me is when you recognize there's actually not two, how much more intimate can it get? Right? But then what will happen when you recognize that, then you also have to recognize, you have to let go of everything else meaning something about a separate I. Because normally what we do is we recognize what I'm saying, and then a thought comes up or fear comes up or something comes up, and we make it mean something about me personally. That's what I was talking about in the meditation. We personalize the appearance of a thought or a feeling, let's just say. And we personalize it, and we go, oh, that means something about me. And as soon as we do that, you see, we've got a problem. We've moved away from the intimacy because we're insisting that we're separate from that which is always intimate, because there's only one. Does it make sense?
Yes, I think so, yeah. There are 1,000 questions appearing, but I'll just let them be for a moment.
Yeah, but it's cool because you're aware of the thousands of questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so right now you can just go, oh my God, I'm aware of 1,000 questions. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't ask the 1,000 questions,
Yeah.
But it might be more interesting just go, oh, wow, look at that, I'm aware. And so next time 1,000 fears arise, it's the same thing as 1,000 questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to recognize that too.
Yeah, and it's just a very interesting process to go through, because then no matter how, no matter what situation you're in, and no matter how intense it is, you can start to get more space from it and recognize that whatever's happening in any particular situation is not affecting the truth of who you already are.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. That's a very big thing to do. But it's doable. In every moment, it's doable. It's just something we have to practice. Yeah, and sometimes I think a good thing to practice is just stop and just think about, just look around and just kind of be curious about things, and curious about, wow, I'm just sitting here doing nothing and everything's okay. Or you look around at Lata and Flores and Isa, and you're just going, wow, I really love these guys, even though maybe they bug me sometimes, but actually I really love them.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, something occurred to me while you were talking about that maybe it's too, well, I don't know. I was thinking about, because when you say intimacy and when I thought of comfort, I think about touch, about skin and feeling and um, now I'm a little bit confused about it, I guess. Like if
well,
there's if I know that there's comfort in me and intimacy, but there's also nothing wrong with touch and with comfort from someone else, right? Or
no, there's nothing wrong with it. The only thing that makes it into a problem is if you think something is missing and you need something from
yeah.
the other in order to be able to be okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really, it's always, this is kind of the answer to a lot of these questions, is because it's not the thing itself, it's the need for a particular thing. It's the need itself that goes. But when you're resting in that which is, where there is nothing missing and everything is already present.
Yeah.
You see, then you of course, we're here in a body, so why not experience touch, Why not, why not initiate it? I mean, sometimes people don't initiate touch because they're so convinced, that they can't. And that's just an imposition on our hearts and our free expression.
And also maybe I was thinking, if you are in need and then you will sort of receive the intimacy from someone else, it's actually not really receiving or giving. It's sort of like it's like throwing something into like a pile of something without the bottom. Like there's no ends to. You cannot fill it up or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's very good the way that you're describing it, because if you're convinced that something is missing and you're looking outside yourself and you're hoping that somebody's going to fill it, but you're still convinced that something's missing, it's like what you're saying. It's a bottomless pit.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, but then can you imagine if you look at this need, this need for intimacy, let's just put it that way, you can see that it's the root of a lot of suffering, because we're always wanting something from the other to make us feel better. And then they never can give it to us because it's a bottomless pit. So then the person is you're always going to be frustrated with the person you're with or with the people around you, because they're not giving you what you want. And then they're just feeling like there's nothing I can do. So it's a big mess. I mean, you can kind of see how it works, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it depends on, in which, I'm not so familiar with the word yet, but if you are in consciousness, I don't know if you say in consciousness or if you are.
You can say your consciousness itself, or just I am,
Yeah. So when I am,
mm-hmm.
I can really receive something and give something.
Right.
When I'm in my ego, I'm only like grasping around but not receiving, and not giving something, but I'm like pulling a lot of energy away from everyone and myself.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about it, it's like everybody craves intimacy, but they don't allow themselves to receive it.
Yeah.
And they actually don't allow themselves to give it. And that's really what ego is. It's like it's a cage that we imagine that we're in, and then everybody else is walking around in their cage, and all we're doing is the two egos are just bouncing off each other. And every once in a while, maybe there's a nice little moment of intimacy, because we jump out for a second, then we spring back, And that's really what it is. So the way you're describing it, it's impossible. Giving and receiving actually is, it's not two things. It's basically, you could say true intimacy is the cycle of giving and receiving. And when that cycle turns into one thing, that's what intimacy actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my, it's good.
It's really good the way you're describing it, though, because yeah, you can see why the seeking is never fulfilled if we're not able to even receive that which is given.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with giving also, because a lot of times I think also with intimacy or with friendship or whatever you find intimacy in, you think that you're giving something, but actually if you're in your ego, you're really like getting something. So you're giving, but you're actually sort of secretly, because you're making like a list of losses, like I gave you, like now you have to give me 3 things back.
Exactly.
So you're not really giving, you're sort of counting so you can receive.
Well, you're kind of just setting up failure for the other person. Because it's like no matter what they do, it's never going to be enough. And, you know, and your happiness is dependent on them giving everything to you, but you won't allow to receive the everything that they're giving if they actually are giving everything. You know, so it's just this, it's just a constant state of unhappiness. You know, we're unhappy, and we're also imposing unhappiness on others, and then they're in the same cycle doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, but if we all just stop for a moment and realize, you know, wow, actually I don't need anything from anyone else, because I am who I am and you are that also. And this is not just kind of spiritual language that can make everybody feel better. It takes a lot to actually drop all the ideas that everything is not always already here and now.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can start recognizing, oh, I'm just sitting here having a cup of tea, but I'm so completely content.
And that's so nice because
Yeah.
life is being.
Have you ever had one of those moments where you're just like, wow, everything's so perfect, and then the voice comes in and it's like, yeah, but I got this problem and that problem and this. But in that moment, you're just like, yeah, but everything's okay. And then the voice, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course, all the time. It's the
Yeah.
whole thing. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
tricky.
But when that voice arises, you can also recognize, you see, if everything that is arising within consciousness or within your awareness is all arising out of the source, the same source, the yeah, but voice, the yeah, but something's missing, you see, that's also coming from consciousness. But that voice, when you start to recognize it, what does that voice do? It makes you either wake up or it makes you suffer.
Yeah.
Right? And isn't that, if you look at that as a gift, as something that can teach you instead of something you want to get away from, you can recognize it and go, oh God, right. There it is right there. It's going, wake up, wake up. There's nothing missing, there's nothing missing. That's what that voice is really all about.
Yeah. It doesn't help much.
No, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. I mean, it really doesn't help at all. But then, really it comes down to, if you recognize that that voice is there to wake you up and you keep refusing to receive the gift that's being given, you can also recognize that you're causing yourself your own suffering. Nobody's doing it to you.
Yeah, and it's so nice to take. For me, I've been noticing it for I think half a year, or that it's so nice to take responsibility and take care of you. Because if I take care of me, I'm taking care of you also.
Right. Right, because if you take care of yourself in a way that we're talking about from this context, there is no other, so everybody else has to be affected.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredibly simple, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Lata. See, it's really important when we talk about these things that we really implicate ourselves, because otherwise it just turns into, interesting conversation, but no transformation really occurs. Uh, so I just really encourage everybody to think, well, like, how do I do that? Or, where is it that I think I'm suffering? Or who is it that's not fulfilling all my needs and wants? Because it's quite a leap sometimes to take responsibility for your own reactivity and not blame others. And then the next question people usually ask is, well, yeah, but they're doing really horrible stuff. And maybe they are doing horrible stuff. But that still doesn't, obviously it will affect you in a certain way, but it won't affect you in the way of thinking that you are not able to rest in who you always already are until somebody else or something else changes. That idea has to really go. And then what happens is you liberate the situation, you liberate the other person, because they're no longer the object that you need in order to be able to rest in who you always already are. Can you imagine? I mean, has anybody ever felt that from somebody else? That somebody wants you to be a certain way so that they can be happy. And there's nothing you can do because you keep trying and it's never enough. Being on that side of the fence, and simultaneously, it's very interesting, you can be on the other side of the fence and you can be the person who's demanding everybody. So it's very interesting how we can be on both sides of the fence at the same time and we don't recognize either fence. We just keep bouncing around. We really have to shift. We have to shift paradigms, though. We have to shift the context in which we see from. Because if we're looking at everything constantly through the separate eye, which is basically what most people are doing, even people who have deep understandings of what I'm saying, a lot of times the fundamental ground is still coming from the imposition that I still have something else to do before I can be myself. And that's how deep the habit goes. But you're not stuck, even if the habit is very deep. In every second, you have the capacity to see through it and to do something different. And you may have to make some effort at the beginning. And it may not feel good, but you even ask yourself, well, whoever said, this is one thing I've been thinking about lately, just this whole idea of that we should feel good. Well, where did that come from? Can anybody tell me who said that?
Well, I was going to say something like that about how we expect it to look a certain way. So yesterday I had a very intimate conversation with Dave, and we were in that place of love together, not loving each other, just love. And then I went about my business in the garden and I just felt a lot of sadness, which isn't how you're supposed to feel when you've touched into that place of intimacy. But I just realized, what does it matter? What does it matter how it looks like? If as I was clear of the place I was in. And yeah, I think it could look anyhow, really. It could just, there's no way of knowing how it's going to look.
Yeah, and if you feel a deep sadness, if you draw the conclusion that it should feel different, you see, then you're missing the opportunity to just be with the sadness, and not be with it like you have to be sad, but just let it arise and it'll take you wherever it takes you. But you don't have to hold on to anything. I think that's the main idea.
Yeah. I mean, mainly it's holding on to how we think it should look. And
Right.
Who knows how it's going to look?
Yeah, because maybe if you just rest very deeply in the sadness in your garden, maybe there's just beauty in that, More and more, it's like, you start to recognize, why do I keep wanting to change the experience that I'm already having? And it's usually because you think, right, just like what you were saying, you think that you're not feeling what you should be feeling. But then you go, well, who's telling me how I should be feeling?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the sadness. It doesn't do any harm. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And it's a deep, rich sensation. And yeah.
Well, it kind of just is what it is, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's the beauty. That's where the freedom comes in, when you stop trying to make something out of something. I'm not saying that's what you were doing with the sadness, but that's the habit. We're trying to make something out of something instead of it just is what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it for a second. How often you try to make something out of something. You have a certain feeling and you have to do something with it, or you have a lack of a certain feeling and you got to do something with that. Right? So you're very busy trying to come up with whatever you think you should be doing or thinking or feeling, but you actually don't even know what you think you should be doing, feeling, or thinking, but you're reaching for that which you think you should be doing, feeling, and thinking. But you don't even know what it is. Can anybody relate to this?
Yeah.
So then you don't have to kind of try to dissect that and go, oh my God, why do I do that? You could just look and see the insanity of it and how it's all based on the fact of there's something missing right now, something's wrong, and that's it. And that's only coming from a place of separation. It can only come from there. Because if you rest in that which is aware, you will find that there is nothing missing. And the reason why nothing is missing is because there is no other. And there also is no separation. If there is no separation, that means you're never apart. I had this experience once. I was doing a long retreat. And I was reading The Power of Now for the first time. I always thought it was kind of a lame book because it was so mainstream. I'd never read it. I just had lots of ideas about it. And anyway, so I decided to take it on this retreat with me. And I don't know, for all of you that have read it, you know that Eckhart Tolle, he writes a little bit of something and he has a little squiggle thing, and you're supposed to actually stop and contemplate when you see the little squiggle. Most of the time when you have these kind of books, what do? You bypass the squiggle because you think you know everything already anyway, right? But what I was doing is I was reading it and I was stopping at every single squiggle. And it was blowing my mind. And I got to a point where the nothing missing thing, and he's saying, oh, nothing's missing. And I'm like, yeah, there's something missing. And I'm just like, there's got to be something missing. And so I started to think of all the things that possibly were missing. Here I was sitting there by myself and I'm thinking, well, Pete's not here. And then I thought, well, is he missing? And when I thought about it, he wasn't missing, even though he wasn't there. And then I kind of took it one step further and I thought, well, what if he died and I never saw him again? Would something be missing? And when I sat there and I thought about it, I just was like, no, there's still nothing missing. Because where would he go? It was just a very interesting contemplation to see, and then try to make a list, of what's missing. And everybody can do this, and you don't have to be in some deep spiritual state in order to go through this contemplation. You know, it's like, oh, I have to be resting so deeply that I'll really get it. No, just sit and start asking yourself, you know, what do I think is missing right now? And then when you make your list, or you come up with the first thing on your list, go, but is anything really missing? And then it takes you somewhere. So you have to ask the question first, is something missing? You know, what is it that's missing? And then you put down something like Pete. I put down Pete in this case. And then you have to ask yourself, is it really true? Is he missing? I could say he's not physically here. That's not the question, though. The question is something missing? So this is one of those times, you know, that you can do this exercise and really go somewhere. It's kind of like I'm giving you a squiggle now to maybe do the exercise and not just hear the exercise and then move on, but to actually do it and see where it takes you. Because we can be very lazy, right? We can just hear something and just think it's going to land, or I'm going to really get it, but we do have to make effort. You know, to make effort to actually be able to, you know, to be able to rest and actualize that which we've understood, either intellectually or even deeper than intellectually. Because you can have a very, very deep spiritual experience of oneness. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to live it. Right away. I think that's why sometimes people get very frustrated. You go on a retreat or you do something, right? Or you have an experience and it just doesn't stick. And the reason it doesn't stick is because usually the follow-through is not very consistent. If anybody has anything popping up right now in their consciousness, then don't hold back. You could just say, what was that?
Well, I was thinking about missing, and when somebody dies, and then you think of them, and there's what we call missing. What's going on there? I mean, the obvious interpretation is, oh, I won't be able to see them again or talk to them again. But I suppose if I do what you did about Pete, I would find there was nothing missing. But there is something that arises called, oh, I miss him. He's not here anymore. You know, I can't see him anymore. I can't. Or I'll have a thought and I'll think, oh, I'd love to tell him that. Oh, I can't.
Yeah, but you see, that's an idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, there's a story of Ramana Maharshi, and he was dying of cancer, and one of his closest students was crying and was very upset. And I can't remember the exact words, but basically he said something to him like, you still don't get it. I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
You know, and it's just the idea. You see this, if you really think about it, isn't it just an idea that we think the person is going somewhere, or that they're, it's just an idea. If you really think about it, where are they going to go?
Yeah. But I can't talk to them, and I can't hear their answer. I can't say, oh, can't ask a question and get an answer. But I guess I could if I really tuned in.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you may not have the same physical or auditory specific experience when somebody is embodied, but that doesn't mean that you can't connect and even have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Because again, the manifest world and the unmanifest, we put a division between that, and it makes sense from one perspective. But you know, there's lots of stories. I mean, and I don't want to make it just specific to like advanced spiritual beings, but a lot of people will agree, and it has been said, and I find it true in my own experience, is when if someone has a teacher, for example, and that teacher leaves the body, sometimes the relationship with that teacher even gets stronger.
Yeah.
So then what does that tell us? You know, that's why I say I don't want to make it just about a specific, you know, kind of somebody who's come to a certain place. But the same thing happens that, you know, when we're communicating with animals, so to speak, because we think, oh, I can't communicate with an animal. But it's actually not true if we don't impose. And, you know, a lot of, it's very interesting because when you're communicating with, you could say an animal or somebody who's, you could say, disembodied, the communication line is the line of love. It's the line of consciousness itself.
Yeah.
And as long as that isn't being limited by ideas, then I would question how if the communication is actually limited.
Yeah, actually, I remember the other day, we've got a tree in the garden that's quite sick, and I decided to go and talk to it, and it answered me. It's very straightforward, actually.
Yeah. We just have to learn to listen differently, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the point I'm trying to make, not to make anybody go, wow, that's really far out and weird, but just the point I'm trying to make is just the ideas that we place, and the definition we always use for ego is that it's the habit of insistence that limitation and separation is real. But sometimes we forget the limitation part because we limit what's possible. I mean, even intimacy, you know, even in those moments, if you have a partner and there's some kind of, you get what you think you wanted and you feel intimate, maybe that feeling of intimacy that you just experienced is so much less than what's actually possible. So then the question is, why do we want to settle for less than everything? Even if we don't know what everything is. So we really have to decide, you know, do we want to live a life of, you know, unlimited extraordinary possibilities? Or do we want to live a life of settling for mediocrity? And, you know, when we're really, I mean, if you look at your experience, you know, if you're really suffering and then you find some space, there's a level of relaxation there that wasn't there before. And it feels really, really good. And we might settle for that. But then something else happens, and then that space that we've experienced, that little sense of freedom, you know, something else happens, and then we're like, no, this isn't free either. And then we just keep we keep going. But I think sometimes what happens is we get to a point where we're kind of like, yeah, this is pretty good. But I think, I mean, my experience is pretty good is far less than what's possible. Pretty good sounds pretty bad, don't you think? I mean, just think about it for yourselves. Everybody should be pointing fingers at themselves right now. Do I think pretty good is okay? Is pretty good enough? Am I settling for something way less than what's possible? I mean, it's fine if you want to. It's cool. It's your decision. I'm just, you know, and then what's kind of funny, you know, if you got somebody that's just going like, oh my God, ecstatic intimacy is something, wow, that's amazing, it's possible. Or telling you that, there's something far beyond anything you could imagine. And there's part of you who can get kind of angry at that. And that would be the part of you that's saying, no, I'm just happy with my mediocrity. Guys, I can't really tell what's going on with any of you guys on the screen. Sometimes I can't even tell if you're frozen.
Cynthia, Rick here. If I could bring something in.
Hi, Rick.
Yeah, I really love what you're bringing in this ecstatic intimacy that you said. I experience that as it's not dependent on how long I've known somebody. It could be with anyone at any time. It's the sort of this ecstatic giving and receiving in a moment that's not dependent on anything other than the willingness to be available. And I think it's limiting to think this one person, that maybe the person I spent my whole life with, is the person that I could only have this ecstatic intimacy with. And I feel like consciousness is actually, it's not personal in any way like that. I feel it's just this, it's recognizing the availability of static intimacy in any moment with anyone and anything. And earlier you said something about when we were talking, whether you want to be on camera or not, and you said you want to be seen. I think one of the things with this intimacy is you so want to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
To be seen and seeing together. And that's the intimacy, I think. It's this beautiful, intimate seeing together that's like this event is seeing itself and becoming more.
Right.
And I love your word, ecstatic intimacy, because that's what it feels. That's what the sense is. And it's when you recognize it's here, you recognize, oh my God, it's always here. Mm. It's always available. Mm. And I feel, it's this sense of not recognizing the abundance that's always right here in the moment, and the potential for so much more. And I think that's the intimacy, it feels like.
Yeah, and I think one way to say that is when the seer and the seen, there's no longer any separation there. They become one. Because, ecstatic intimacy, and I'm just saying those words because, I don't know what that looks like. I know what I experience, but I don't know if that's as good as it gets. But I think the interesting thing is, see, the separate I completely disappears. And so it's just happening. And there's not even, there can be not even a witness to it. It's just occurring. And then sometimes there is a witness, and you can recognize it. And you recognize the interaction between you, and if it's with another person, you can recognize that. But that recognition is also ecstatic. Hmm. So when you completely disappear, you don't, it's just happening. But then when you're aware of it, it's also ecstatic because there's a joy in that which is in being aware.
And seeing it together and awareing it and presencing it together. And yeah. I think that just, and then from there, it feels like it's beckoning. What's so funny, it's like you feel this tremendous abundance and intimacy, and yet you're leaning forward with what more is possible right in the moment. And right. That's exciting.
Right, exactly. Because you're more interested in what's possible than you are interested in holding on to something you've already got.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing missing. You don't have to hold on to anything.
Yes.
No, it's true. And then it opens up all possibilities. Because if you think of your ideas of what intimacy is, right? I mean, you can think about what they are now, but you can think about maybe what you thought they were when you were, 16 and your hormones were going crazy or whatever. But you know, we have all these ideas of what intimacy actually is. And when you start thinking about it, they're pretty ridiculous. You know? And then we're trying to achieve a certain feeling. And when you really start to get, when you start to think about, wow, intimacy is when I completely disappear, and you know, and there's just a complete awareness and recognition of that which is, that which I already am. In that recognition, there's ecstatic intimacy. But then when you compare that to feeling good, you start to get how much limitation we place on what's possible.
Feeling good seems to be like holding on to the past.
Yeah.
And thinking like something is not possible right now. And so something's lacking. But in this, what I think you're explaining is the sense of this completely nothing lacking now. And yet, oh my God, there's still more. And I just leaning forward into what's more possible and what's more possible. And so it's not holding back to anything, because holding on implies a lack almost, right? It feels like if I have to hold on to something, this means at this moment there's something lacking, but that's not here. It's just nothing lacking now. And it's just more is unfolding, and it's just all so abundant and amazing. And you're just leaning forward, wanting to see together this unfolding together and becoming whatever's happening.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then if you think about it, there's nothing to hold on to because there's nothing really there.
There's nothing to hold on to. Yeah.
It's not a thing, you know, it's not a thing. And, you know, and every moment is just now. And when you start to really recognize, you know, what we're saying, the whole movement to grasp, you start to see through the illusion of grasping. Because why would you want to hold on to something dead?
Yes. Actually, that grasping seems to dissolve. And there's just a availability, a vulnerability and availability to what's unfolding now.
Right.
And that's so captivating.
Yeah. Because you're not trying to create anything. You're not trying to maintain anything. You're not trying to mold anything. You're just with what's already arising, and the essence of anything that's arising is joy. And it doesn't mean that one might always feel joyful, because I want to make this very real also. But I really think that we won't have the same struggles. We'll be, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think I'm just trying to say is that, again, it's not about trying to create a certain feeling experience. Because even if you're with someone and it's just very calm, you know, and there's no fireworks going off. But if you're not imposing any separation, then even that quietness, you know, there's a depth of intimacy in there that might look very different than what it did the last time. But that, and again, we're talking about it with another person, but this is something when you're resting in this deeper dimension of oneself, as oneself, all sorts of stuff can be going on, and then rest can still be, you know, you're not imposing anything. And I think it's that understanding and that recognition is what brings us so much happiness and so much joy. But it's not a feeling sensation, necessarily.
Yeah. You know, I recognize that so much, you know, in quiet moments and still moments, when nothing said, or even on retreat. I remember when just those exercises, you're just standing in front of somebody and looking in their eyes, and there's just nothing said, and it's just quiet stillness, and there's just this, you know, can be tears of intimacy, of just of recognizing something mysterious that we are.
Yeah. I think that's really good that you.
Yeah.
It's really good what you're saying, Rick, because those, for all of you that have ever done kind of eye gazing, you're just looking into the emptiness of your own self, and there's nothing to do. It just is, and you are, and that's it.
And it's just abundant. It's just full and abundant, nothing missing.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
If you're finished, right? Okay. I really loved what you were saying about intimacy is the seer being at the same time the seen, and then you say that it's not a feeling experience as I understood you, and then there was something in me that said, when I recognized what you just said, that I, the seer, is identical, is the seen at the same time, then I felt first so intimate that I almost blushed. But later on I felt, no, but there is another feeling experience to it. I feel some kind of, it's very warm, a feeling of warmness, of fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
But it's exactly what you said, that it's maybe not an feeling experience, but there are many feelings connected to it. It's not without feelings, this intimacy.
Right. I mean, we're always going to feel something, but I think, see, it's very free not to expect anything. Not to expect anything. Because maybe you feel nothing, but there's a recognition of something. So I think that's really what I'm trying to say with this thing of feeling, because there's a way that we can subtly always want to have a particular feeling, or even if we don't want to have a particular feeling, we still want to have some feeling. We can very subtly have an expectation about something, but what if we didn't have any expectations about anything?
Yeah, that's freedom.
That's freedom, yeah. And then if we feel, we feel. If we don't feel, we don't feel, because freedom is not, it's not dependent upon any kind of feeling, the presence of feeling or the absence of feeling. You know, freedom is really about resting in the realization of unity as oneself. And whatever that feels like is what it feels like. So again, you know, no expectations. Because if we have no expectations in what we're talking about, obviously we might have an expectation if somebody's supposed to pick us up from the bus at 2 o'clock, we have an expectation they're going to show up or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a particular, having no expectations of what God is supposed to look like when we understand who it is or what it is.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody, I just encourage you to start thinking about these things and just look how often that you have ideas about how something should be, how you should be, how someone else should be, how you should feel, how they should feel, how you need something, how you're looking for something, and just see the whole play of it. And recognize that you are that which is aware of the whole play, and be more interested in that which is aware than the content that's arising within your awareness. Just do that exercise, and then you might see that over and over again you're fascinated with the content. But just be aware in the moment that I'm completely fascinated with this, but you're aware that you're fascinated, so then you just shift back. Just try it. You know, try it for an hour, try it for a day, and see where it takes you, and just keep gently bringing yourself back of like, oh, I'm that which is aware. Oh, I'm that which is aware. Oh, I'm that. Oh, look at that. I'm aware that I'm frustrated because I keep going with the content instead of that which is aware. But I'm aware of that. Okay, I'm back with that which is aware. Over and over and over and over and over again. But you see, if you keep doing it, you start to shift where you're resting, what you're identifying. You're always consciousness. You can't get away from the fact that you're always that. You are that one. It's never not true. No matter what you think, no matter what you feel, no matter how disconnected you are, the truth is there is only one, and you are that. And there's nothing you can do about it. So that's the good news. So I'm aware of the time. So I'm always good about trying to not keep people up too late. So I appreciate everybody coming on the webinar tonight, and we'll do it again the first Wednesday of October. I'm trying to think of what month we're in. So yeah, please let other people know about it if you're so inspired. We'll send out the links to the recording tomorrow, and also somebody had asked, James, I think it was you, was asking about making a donation, so we can send you the information about that also. So if anybody would like to make a donation, we'll be very happy to receive it. Yeah, and I think that's it. So it's nice seeing everyone. And please actually, between now and the next webinar, or now and the next time, I see you, some people I'll see sooner than later, really do some of these things that we talked about tonight. Really put them into practice and see where it takes you. Because if you really want to rest more deeply and be happier, sometimes you just got to do a lot of work. It's just the way it is. And remember, nobody said it's easy. Nobody said it necessarily feels good. Okay? All right. So we can unmute everyone if you want. And everybody, if they want to turn on their cameras, I think the Miserella guys look like they're sitting in the dark.
We are.
Okay.
Everyone.
Oh, hey, there you guys are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Nice to see everybody.
Bye.
All right. Take care.